Hey
Hey
everybody,
everybody,
it's
it's
Linda
Linda
here
here
from
from
Linda
Linda
Lippin's
Lippin
Pilates,
Pilates,
Pilates Teacher
Pilates Teacher
Mastermind,
Mastermind,
Strong Women
Strong
Over
Women Over
50,
50.
Pilates Profit Lab. And
And
I
I
am
am
here
here
today for
today
an
for an
expert
expert
interview with
interview
my
with my
friend
friend
Nicole
Nicole
Cheri
Cheri
Oden,
Oden,
who
who
is a
is a
brilliant
brilliant
attorney
attorney
based in
based in
California.
California.
Um,
Um,
now,
Now,
I
I
think
think
Nicole has a
Nicole has a
very
very
interesting
interesting
story
story.
because she has been in her
Her
own
own
practice for
practice for
about
about
10
10
years
years
now.
now.
Didn't you
Didn't
just
you just
hit that
hit that
10-year
10-year
mark?
mark?
Your
Your
daughter's
daughter's
5.
5.
She's 5.5. Yeah, she'll be starting kindergarten in August.
Wow.
Wow.
And
And
Nicole
Nicole
made
made
that
that
decision
decision
10
10
years
years
ago
ago
to
to
move
move
from a
from a
corporate
corporate
law
law
career
career
So 5
at
years
a
at a
ago,
firm,
firm.
5 years ago. I've been on my own for 5 years this year.
5
5
years
years
into
into
her
her
own
own
practice.
practice.
And that
And
had
that
to
had
be
to be
kind of
kind of
a
a
interesting
interesting
jump
jump
and an
and an
interesting
interesting
moment.
moment.
To say the least.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So tell
So
us a
tell
little
us
bit
a
more
little bit
about
more about
yourself, and then
yourself,
I
and
want
then
to
I want to
dive into that.
dive into that.
Yeah, so hi, I am Nicole Cheri Oden. As Linda said, I am licensed in the state of California. I've been practicing for 10 years this year. I have my own virtual law practice, Nicole Cheri Oden Law, PC, and I also have an online business. So I provide legal templates for other online business owners who aren't ready to work with an attorney one-on-one. The majority of my practice for a long time was family law. And then after I had my daughter, life got interesting. Things flipped themselves upside down and inside out. And I found myself in the online space. Originally in a kind of health and wellness capacity, I was really trying to find myself and deal with postpartum anxiety that I was experiencing. And I ended up interacting with a lot of amazing entrepreneurial women. And so we would start chatting and they'd find out I was an attorney and they would literally send their legal questions into my Instagram DMs. So every time I would say, hey, you should probably chat with an attorney in your state and you want to make sure, you're doing things the right way, I would get, it's too overwhelming, it's too scary, it's too expensive. And that was kind of when I had my entrepreneurial light bulb go on that was like, hey, there's this whole population of people that need help. They need an attorney that's going to kind of understand some of the nuances of the online space and work with them to make legal affordable and accessible. So I launched the legal template shop, which has been wonderful. And I started working with online business owners one-on-one who are ready to work with an attorney in that capacity and also providing trademarks. So it's been kind of a fun, twisting journey.
Yeah, and then you also still have a family law side.
So I do settlement-minded family law. I have done family law, like I said, since the inception of me becoming an attorney. I clerked with the former presiding judge of the Los Angeles County Superior Court and sat through the McCourt divorce, which was commonly called the Dodger divorce. And it was an interesting perspective on family law. And again, I was kind of seeing the underserved population. So it was great being involved in this high-profile trial. But I was also seeing the people that were in pro per, that were coming in representing themselves, that were, dealing with some very real, raw family law issues. And so that's kind of how I started my career. But especially, in having my daughter, it's a very emotional practice. So I found that I've kind of developed this yin and yang. So I love family law. I love my clients. I love that settlement-minded part of my practice. But it's also so fun and invigorating to work with these business owners that are starting something new or growing a practice that, they're so passionate about. So it's just very different energy. So it's nice to kind of bounce between both of them.
That's
awesome.
Now, were you
pre-law
pre-law undergrad?
undergrad?
Did you always know this was going to be your path?
No. It's funny because since I was like 7, my dad would say, you're going to be an attorney. You love to argue and you always have to have the last word. And that's me. I mean, you ask my husband, that's just my personality. I'm very opinionated and vocal about it. But I did not want to go down that road. I think we all have a very stereotypical view of an attorney. And I was like, no, that's not for me. I actually wanted to be an English professor in college. And so my undergrad degree is in English, rhetoric and composition with a minor in sociology. And it was that minor that really exposed me to actually really wanting to pursue a legal career. I took a sociology of child abuse course. And that was eye-opening. Like I'm getting chills right now because I just remember going to chat with somebody in the social work department because I was just so impassioned after, exploring these issues. And so I wanted to kind of, how can I help? Like, where can I have a career where I'm helping? And I remember talking to the social worker about the rate of burnout and how difficult it really is to have a career in social work. And she said, I think given your personality and your background, I think you would do wonderful with a career in the legal industry. And so that's kind of where my family law, direction started. I ended up volunteering for the Domestic Violence Project in the Los Angeles County Superior Court for 2 years. That time was invaluable. And I take a lot of the training and the practical experience with my clients to this day. I don't handle domestic violence matters anymore. It's just something that after having my daughter, the emotional stress of it was a lot. And I think it takes a special person to kind of practice in that area. But I'm forever grateful for kind of that weird change in my trajectory.
Yeah. Well, two interesting stories that go along with that is that I was a philosophy major undergrad. So a large number of philosophy and English majors tend to either stay in the field. So I went to the PhD in philosophy, but a bunch of my friends went to law school and chose that route. And the other funny story is that my husband and I actually got married in family court. We were scheduled with to do a city hall wedding in Philly, and the judge got sick. But I had all this family coming in from New York. So I was set on a date. And my ex-roommate, who had undergraded with me in philosophy at Purchase, but who went to Penn Law, he was doing family law practice at that point, and he found us a judge. And we actually got married in his same purse.
That judge was probably ecstatic. That was probably like one of
They were crying. His staff were like, "This is the best thing we've had in like months."
Yeah. It's
because we had the ex there, we had the kid there, we had the, it was a representation of that kind of blending of families. And they loved it.
Yeah, I love that. That's such a sweet story.
Yeah. So talk to me a little bit about the online space and what you're doing there. I know that you have a focus on trademark law. As you know, I immediately trademarked Pilates Teacher Mastermind when I started using it. I thought to myself, because a lot of times I think as business owners, we think if it's a generic phrase, that we just shouldn't bother trademarking it. But as I found out, because as you know, I did it myself and didn't use an attorney because I'm like that. I ended up on the second register, on the supplemental register, due to the genericness of the term. However, that secondary register still gives me the right to use the registered trademark mark. It also still gives me legal backing if somebody tries to use Pilates Teacher Mastermind. And why is this so important?
Oh my gosh, that's a loaded question. So, so I'm just going to give my quick little disclaimer because I always do when I'm chatting legal stuff. So I am an attorney. I'm not your attorney. Everything we're chatting about is just legal education and information. You should always chat with an attorney in your area to make sure that you are taking the right steps for you and your business. Because it really does depend. It's situational, and there are some very broad overreaching concepts, but it's your business and there's nuances that you definitely want to explore. So trademark protection is brand protection at the end of the day, right? So in the United States, there are common law trademarks and there are federally registered trademarks, and they're two distinct things. I think that people like to use the concept of trademark, like I'm going to get a trademark. You don't get a trademark by applying for registration. You have a trademark from the second that you start using that word or phrase or the design, and it's connected to your product. It's a service mark that's connected to a service, and it's being used in commerce, meaning you're selling the goods, you're selling the widgets, or you're coaching and you're actually making sales to coaching clients. So you have the trademark, quote unquote, from the time that you start using it. In the US, we're kind of a first in use system. but it's protecting that brand that you're building, right? That's where the federal trademark registration comes in. And you can register in your state, but then you only have protection in your state, versus the federal registration is across all 50 states. And in the online business world, which is where I focus, it makes the most sense, right? Because we don't know where our customers or our clients are coming from. They could be in California, they could be in Alaska. So having the more encompassing protections makes sense. So yeah, it's just one of those things. It's an asset for your business. And that's where I like to get business owners thinking. It really is an asset, because you're building this goodwill. People are connecting the name to you and your goods or your services. And you want to keep that intact. You want to protect that, because that is such a valuable asset, especially because in the online space, we really are building personal brands. I mean, as much as their businesses, they're personal brands.
Right.
There's been this kind of swing in business, I think, to where having a face to a business is very important. And especially with COVID, we've seen this resurgence of support for small online businesses, which has been amazing. So that's where the federal trademark registration comes in, because you have that protection. You're able to send the cease and desist letter to say, hey, I took the steps, I'm protecting this, like stop infringing on my rights if there's something that could potentially be confused. So
yeah, it's interesting, you and I have chatted about the Pilates trademark situation, right? And I find that a lot of Pilates professionals at this point tend to shy away from anything trademark related due to PTSD from from the lawsuit over the using just the word Pilates. We all spent years tiptoeing around it, doing exercises based on the work of Joseph Pilates, using Joseph Pilates in the historical context only, anything we could do. And now it's like, I'm hoping that more people embrace owning their trademark and owning, their brand. I think it's very, very important. Now, you also have a whole service of pre-done online templates.
I do.
Talk to me about that.
Yeah, so I was finding, like I said, people were messaging me on Instagram, of all places, to get legal advice. And so when I would say, work with an attorney, and they would say it's so expensive, it was kind of one of those, I go into mama bear mode, because the soapbox I will forever stand on is having a written contract. I think putting things in writing is imperative as a business owner. Those handshake deals are great, but when it comes time to have that he said, she said conversation, it's very hard to piece things together when you're pulling things, especially in the online space, from Facebook messages and emails and text messages and recollections of phone calls, and trying to show really what the deal was. So it was a way to stop people from literally going to Google and pulling the first thing that they saw pop up and using it for their business, without knowing if there's provisions in there that protect them, without knowing if there's provisions in there that could hurt them. They're just literally pulling and using, which A, could be a copyright infringement issue in and of itself, which is a whole separate issue. But B, it's a basic place for them to start, to have that contract, to have their website policies. And I always recommend you take the template that you've completed to an attorney, work with them, make sure that it is done, in the best way that it can be for your business and your particulars, but it's a starting point. So that's been, a big welcomed thing in the online space.
For sure. Now, when you made the leap from corporate into your own firm, there had to be some fear that happened.
Yeah,
going into that.
Say those 2 months, because it was really like a snap decision. I hear a lot of people talk about getting the business plan in place, and making sure that their I's were dotted and their T's were crossed. And I didn't do that. I was at a boutique firm, working 12 to 14-hour days, and I loved it. And that was great because I was passionate about my work. But then after having my daughter, it just didn't work anymore. And I remember I would be crying into the office, on the way to the office, because I missed my daughter. And then I'd be crying on the way home because I just knew how much was at the office I needed to be doing, and I should be staying later, but I want to get home to my daughter. And it was this weird push-pull. And I just remember thinking, the practice of law does not need to be stagnant like this. It's not I don't want to say fair because that's not the right term, but moms have the opportunity to have a career they love and a family, I think. And that's where I kind of put my stake in the sand. And I was like, you know what, this has to change. And so I remember it was like a couple weeks after going back after my maternity leave. And the managing partner had taken me to lunch and was like giving me a laundry list of extra things to pile on my plate. And I just remember thinking, nope, it's it. I'm done. I'm jumping and hopefully the parachute will come. So I started reaching out to other female attorneys that I had, encountered and built relationships with along the way. And one of them had said, hey, why don't you start doing consulting work? It'll give you some sort of income while you're deciding if you want to, switch practice areas. Do you want to go to a different firm? Like, what do you want to do? It's just a way to have more flexible hours. And I ended up getting like 3 or 4 women that were willing to kind of give me their overflow work just so I could have income and figure out what I was doing. So I built a consulting business before I fully left the other firm, which was amazing. And I did that for a few years. And then, in the interim, I'm, launching the online template store. I'm starting to take my own clients for my practice. And so it was kind of this interesting evolution. And I still do some overflow work for a couple of attorneys when I have the availability now. I have my full roster of clients. I've got my online business. And I'm really just passionate about doing the educational piece, both for family law and for the online space. I think that making legal affordable and accessible is such an integral piece of my role, and it's something that I've embraced.
Well, and I think it's super important because people tend to be scared by 2 things, and that's legal and accounting. Right. At least with my family, you didn't deal with a lawyer unless you were in trouble. Like, seriously. And only rich people had accountants and financial planners. And now I've kind of realized that no, anybody engaged in commerce needs some legal help. And anyone engaged in any kind of commerce at all does need some financial help, some financial planning. People don't magically become rich. People
do
that. They plan and they do it. Who knew? I know in the Pilates space right now, there's a lot of teachers who are in a similar position in that they've been working at an Equinox or a Club Pilates or a, Lifetime. And as things have kind of honed down and tightened down, even with reopening, there's fewer roles for Pilates teachers in those bigger corporate spaces. And they're now looking at what they're going to do next.
Mm-hmm.
And I think making that shift from that employee brain to the entrepreneur space is, again, like a huge leap. It was for me. It was a huge transitionary time because you just get used to whether you're an independent contractor or an employee, you're just used to going to work and they deal with the clients and you just get your check.
Well, and there's so many moving pieces, right? Like, as a business owner, you wear all the hats until you have help. So from the financial piece, the legal piece, the customer service, the web design, the web hosting. I mean, you're doing everything, all the things. So my first hire was my bookkeeper, and she is my saving grace. I adore her, and I tell her I would be lost if she ever leaves, because I always joke that I went to law school so that I would not have to do math. Although, in family law, we do math all the time. But really just understanding that the second you become an entrepreneur, there's a lot that you don't know, and you're going to need a team, and be that employees or independent contractors, you're going to need help. You can't go it 100% alone. I think that's just something you have to accept from day one.
Right. And another theme that you brought in was networking, right? That when you were looking at leaving or exploring leaving the corporate position and doing your own thing, that the first thing you did was you reached out to your network. You reached out to the other female attorneys in your space who you had known and kind of grown to know, like, and trust over time. It's another, I think, fallout of the Pilates trademark lawsuit was a deep splintering within the Pilates community. you and I have talked about this before on a personal level, but literally people don't define themselves by their client outcomes and what they do for people. People define themselves by who they were trained by and what brands of equipment they use. Which I think for the marketplace, no one really cares that much. What they care that like we have training, we're certified and insured. People love that, but that we're going to get them the outcome, that they need. They're not interested in the intricacies of, our business and our apparatus and all of this other stuff. Yet that's what we all focus on, and we don't have, there's not always this ability to reach out to other people. And, I have found, like, since we're both in the advance, which is how we met, frankly. And I think I've seen your stuff before, just kind of in the online space, like looking at legal templates and things like that. But again, seeing that by itself is different from meeting you, knowing you, and then seeing that, right? Because now I'm like, well, she's great. So her templates are great. We know this, right? I don't even have to like think about that. People come to me, they're like online templates. I'm like, yeah, Nicole, that's easy. Or, trademark issues, she's probably going to send you to somebody in your own state, but you can start with
Well, so trademark issues, it's interesting. So the practice of law is state specific, right? Contracts, family law, I'm California. That is where I'm licensed. That's where I can practice. Federal law is what dictates trademark law. So arguably in the online space, I can work with clients across all 50 states.
Oh, fabulous.
Yeah.
Great. But, talk to me about the importance of networking. Like, I have felt it over the past, year that I kind of really started working with higher level women in business in the online space.
Yeah.
And for all of the connections that I've made, everyone's been very giving, very interested, very interesting, and we all send each other clients. Now, this is something I think that Pilates teachers need more of. This is something that I'm looking to develop more of within the Pilates space. But talk to me about the importance of this community and support in you making your shift, growing your family, growing your business. Would you have been able to do it without that?
No, absolutely not. I mean, my firm grew by referrals only. It was only within the last year and a half, really, that I started a website for my law firm, that I actually started doing some sort of advertising, and that was with super lawyers, because I've been nominated as a rising star the last 4 years now.
Awesome.
And so thank you. And so they have an opportunity to kind of have some paid advertising when people search for specific keywords. And so it was only recently that I started really actually kind of doing some of that marketing stuff, because it's just been referral based and my relationships, which has been amazing.
Right. That's right. And Super Lawyers also does that insert in the Times.
Yeah. So which has been amazing marketing in and of itself, because it's free until you decide to do the extra benefits. But so for my practice, it's been referral, word of mouth. For my online business, that really has been relationships too. I mean, it started with, me reaching out to people that I had worked with in previous memberships, or that I had established relationships with, and then they would tell their clients and their friends, and they would tell their clients and their friends, and it's just grown into this network. Same thing until like last year, I think was the first time I kind of started dabbling. I tried Facebook ads, stopped Facebook ads. I just wasn't a big fan, and have really focused on my affiliate program, and doing like guest speaking opportunities, because for me, the educational piece, that's where I'm passionate. That's where I enjoy helping entrepreneurs. I enjoy helping people who are going through the divorce. So just being able to make, the presentations, do the podcast interviews, those types of things, have been wonderful. And again, that's through referrals, people who know people who know people. So
Exactly. So, I'm really hoping that for the Pilates professionals who are watching this, that we really start to look more seriously. Pilates teachers don't talk to each other. You can have 5 studios in a 20 block radius, and none of those studios talk to each other, let alone refer clients to each other.
And I don't think that that's just industry specific though, because there are a lot of attorneys that still operate as an island and they're very cliquey. I just choose to think differently and I choose to practice differently. And there are people out there that do as well. I mean, especially like in my family law practice, right? Divorce involves family law issues. It involves estate planning issues. It involves tax issues. It involves like, I can't handle all of that. That's not my specialty. That's not my area. I have to have professionals that I refer to and that can come in and help and give advice to my clients. And so that's how I look at it in business. Like we all have a special breadth of knowledge. Like you said, you've got specializations in your Pilates practice, right? I know that you work with people who have back pain, and that is something that you excel at and you do wonderfully. There may be somebody who has a different specialty. So maybe a person that reaches out to you would be better served by somebody who has that specialty that you know. And if you flip your thinking, it's not competition. You guys are a community. You guys are working together. And I am a firm believer that that's going to come back to you. You have to view it differently.
Yeah, I think, you know, when we come at it from that like abundance mindset, which is, look, I can only handle like 10 clients at a time. Seriously, like that's all I want to deal with at any given time, you know, except in my group programs and whatever. But for my private one-on-ones, really 10 is like max. And there are more than 10 people in the world who want to work with me privately online. And now I just send them to other teachers. I'm like, you know, I used to specialize in diastasis recti and postnatal because I'm in Tribeca, which in New York City is the land of high net worth, large families. So a lot of diastasis recti going on. And so that was my specialty for a while. I don't really handle that anymore. I train other teachers in dealing with it. Now, are you also doing any work with folks in law school, with kind of women who are up and coming in the legal space on, you know, kind of helping to guide them and mentor them?
Yeah, so that's something that's kind of new, is me kind of working with my law school, getting into kind of the people transitioning out of law school into this new kind of environment, because we're still in this weird hybrid. There are some firms that are still like, you know, you've got your COVID shots, get your butt into the office, you need to be in person. There's some that have embraced virtual. There's some that have embraced some sort of a hybrid. And it's super competitive. The job market right now is super competitive. So a lot of people graduating are trying to decide, do I hang my own shingle? Do I go with a firm? Do I go into, you know, a government job? And so that's been kind of a fun transition, is, you know, working with some of the students, which I hope to do more as time goes on. My time is so limited, and just trying to be available for Em, and, you know, she starts kindergarten this fall. So just making sure that I'm at drop off and pick up, which is kind of one of my biggest like mom life goals. So.
Yeah, I can totally see that. I actually met one of my neighbors the other night. We're dog walking neighbors. You know, she lives in my building. Our dogs love each other. So we were chatting, but she is getting ready to take the LSAT and go to law school, and she's working as a legal assistant now. And I was talking to her about the fact that, you know, I was like, the more that you can kind of powwow and network with women in law, like right now, the better off you're going to be, because you have so many choices in what you can do, you know, after law school, that you know, the path isn't necessarily laid out.
Yeah, and now is the time. I mean, explore. I mean, I explored JAG. There was a bunch of stuff. I was just like, I don't know. You want to kind of figure out what your path is, and it was those connections that ended up getting me. I got the externship with the judge, and then through that, I ended up getting my first job at the firm that I was with for 4.5 years. So it really is kind of who you know, quite honestly.
Yeah, and look, that's the path within the Pilates world as well. I mean, that's literally, you know, it was clients of mine that opened my first studios. Mm-hmm. You know, that's how that happened. But what's happening now, I think a little bit more, but what's needed even more is more of kind of the folks like me who've been teaching for 32 years and have been there and done that, to be out kind of guiding a little bit, the kind of, future generation, because again, it's like the markets, in a way, it's like a tight market, but a wide open market, right? Because we can do so much on our own now. But again, doing it on your own still requires some network of people, because if other people aren't spreading the word, sending you referrals, then you're in a vacuum.
Yeah.
And if you're in a vacuum, you're only going to do so much.
Exactly. Yeah. You're not going to grow. You're like a lone island. So.
Exactly. It's funny because I always joke that, of course, I never took the LSAT because I opted for the PhD philosophy route. But of course, I taught critical reasoning, which is a huge chunk of LSAT prep. It's like, let's get ready for the critical reasoning section of the GREs. Let's get you guys ready who are taking the LSAT, and let's you guys ready who are taking the GMAT, right? We can basically, I had like a third of a semester to kind of cover all of those bases. But I remember the LSAT questions being the hardest because pretty much out of the 4 multiple choice questions, all of them were right. All of them could be argued for, but one was more right
Welcome
than the rest of them. And it was like, now we have to make these distinctions, in our thinking. And I so love you, Nicole. And seriously, your attitude towards what you do, towards being open and giving, and still maintaining your practice, maintaining your family, maintaining the business, and doing it all. I know you just recently did some hiring. I'm in the middle of doing similar hiring, which, I've been talking to my Pilates teachers and my Pilates Teacher Mastermind VIP program about, like, when you get to that point where you can't juggle it all yourself, you actually have to hire people. Which in a way is easier because at least we have a pool of like the whole country to hire from.
True. But you also have to be paying attention to whether you're hiring an employee or an independent contractor, and making sure you're paying attention to the independent contractor laws in your specific state. Like here in California, basically everybody's presumed an employee unless you meet exceptions, and there's exceptions to the exceptions. And so, just a little plug to kind of pay attention as you're growing your team.
Well, sure. But also, I think Pilates teachers need to hear this as they're going back out into the market, because the number of Pilates studios, fitness and yoga studios, I'm not just going to pick on Pilates, who treat independent contractors like employees, but don't pay the matching taxes or deal with benefits, is pretty bad. And the laws in New York are similar to the laws in California.
Yeah, and they're expanding, right? So there's federal legislation. It's wage and hour. I always refer employment law issues to an employment attorney, but there is federal legislation now getting pushed through to be similar to our independent contractor laws in terms of being very pro-employee. So it's interesting. The legal landscape is really, really shifting the past couple of years with trying to catch up with the online space. So it's been nice to kind of be in the forefront and on for the ride, essentially. So
yes. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning, your time, early afternoon, my time. And how can people get in touch with you if they want to learn more about what you're doing, or hire you to help them through their trademark or others?
Yeah, so I am on like all social media platforms for my law firm as Nicole Cheri Oden Law. So contract issues, trademark, or family law, if you're in California, feel free to reach out. The legal template business, that is Nicole Cheri Oden. On Instagram, Nicole Cheri Oden Legal Templates. On Facebook, I am on Pinterest as Nicole Cheri Oden. You can head to the website, feel free to send me a DM or an email. And I would just want to say thank you to you, Linda, too, because I think you're the epitome of like why networking is so important, because not only is it about business relationships, it really is about connecting on a human level, right? And like finding your people.
Yes.
And so it's just been a joy to connect with you and learn about your business and see the work that you're doing, both teaching other Pilates teachers and in your private one-on-one work. You're an amazing human, and it's been fun to kind of just watch you grow just in the past couple of months I've known you. So I'm sure the sky's
thanks. You know, it's very interesting because what I'm trying to seriously push the networking within the Pilates community and the fitness world, because it's just not usually done. And then we're all like, well, how are we finding new clients? Well, like you got, I mean, you're just sitting there like, if somebody said to you, oh, Nicole, I was just diagnosed with osteoporosis, my back is killing me, I don't know what to do, you would probably be like, I'm just going to DM Linda.
I know
And
somebody.
she'll tell you, right? When someone comes to me and they're like, I've got like a trademark question or like a whatever, I'm like, yeah, I'll send them over to Nicole. You know, if they've got stuff that's more diversity related or kind of management policy related, you know, I'll send them over to Patricia. Like, you know, I've got seriously this entire network, and including fitness professionals who do the things I don't do. You know, because I can't take every client and I'm not going to help everybody with every issue. And I think that's, where people get scared. We get scared that in the niching down and the focusing, we're going to somehow lose a client. Whereas, like I've often said to people, so if 100 people showed up at your door tomorrow, could you handle all of them?
Exactly.
And the answer is always no, because we couldn't, because it's way too many people. And I'd have to hire people to deal with that. So, it's kind of like building slowly but surely, but personal referral, again, is the way. Like, I don't see any other way to be building and connecting online. I just really don't. Whether you're doing group or like we do, more one-on-one consultancy work. It's just crucial. So thank you.
Well, thank you again for inviting me on. This was fun. It was a nice way to start a Wednesday.
It was, and I will talk to you soon. Thank you everybody for joining, and I will be back here next week with another expert interview.